Rajab and Ramadan is a month that people don't take advantage of. And today's khutbah is going to be based on 3 ahadith. I'll just narrate the 3 hadiths, the translation of them first, and then we will go into the explanation. It is narrated by Aisha bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha that she said, I never saw the Prophet ﷺ fast for an entire month outside of Ramadan except for the month of Shaban. So Aisha radiallahu anha narrates that Rasulullah ﷺ, the only month which he would fast the entire month besides Ramadan was Shaban. Aisha bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha also narrates the most beloved of months in which Rasulullah ﷺ loved to fast more than anything else was the month of Shaban. He used to combine it with Ramadan, meaning the month in which Rasulullah ﷺ used to love to fast the most was the month of Shaban. And when she said he used to combine it with Ramadan, it means he used to fast the entire month of Shaban and the entire month of Ramadan. So he used to actually fast 2 months. I bring up these narrations because I believe this is a forgotten sunnah. Right? When we talk about the sunnah fasts, we know we should be fasting the 6 days of Shawwal. We know the fast of Ashura, the fast of Zulhijjah, every Monday, the Thursdays, the 3 middle days of each month. These are the sunnah or mustahab fasts that we are familiar with. But for some reason, a lot of people are less familiar with the fast of Shaban. That it was the sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ to fast the month of Shaban. And so the third narration that we want to discuss is narrated by Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, that he said, I asked Rasulullah ﷺ, why do you fast in Shaban more than any other month? Why do you fast in Shaban more than any other month? To which Rasulullah ﷺ replied, it is a neglected month. It is a month that people have neglected between Rajab and Ramadan. And it is a month in which our deeds are raised up to the Lord of the worlds. And I would like my deeds to be raised up while I am fasting. It's a very interesting hadith that gives us many levels of meaning. So, what can we take from these ahadiths? Let's begin. The first thing we can take from these ahadiths is that Shaban is a very important month in Islam. At the same time, it's a neglected month in Islam. Because it comes between Rajab and Ramadan. In Rajab, we have certain dates in Rajab that are significant to us. And when Shaban comes, most of us, our mind is only on Ramadan. Our mind is already on what we're going to do in Ramadan. Let's do our Ramadan shopping. Let's prepare for Ramadan. We don't actually take advantage of the month itself. But just as we physically prepare for Ramadan in the month of Shaban by buying our groceries and our dates and stocking up on savories, and just as we are physically preparing for Ramadan, we also supposed to use this month to spiritually prepare for Ramadan. Spiritually preparing for Ramadan by becoming accustomed to doing additional acts of worship outside of what we normally do. And specifically, I want us to focus on 3 acts of worship that we should increase on in the month of Shaban as a means of preparing for Ramadan. Number 1 is the act of worship mentioned in all 3 of these ahadiths, and that is fasting. So fasting in the month of Shaban, this doesn't mean you have to fast the entire month of Shaban, but combining it with other sunnah fasts. So Mondays and Thursdays in Shaban, or the 3 middle days of Shaban. In this way, you at least get your body accustomed to fasting before the month of Ramadan comes in. And so it was the practice of Rasulullah ﷺ and the righteous that they would spend the month of Shaban spiritually preparing for Ramadan by increasing in these acts of worship. Number 1 is increasing in one's fasting. Let us try and revive the sunnah of fasting in the month of Shaban as a means of preparation for the month of Ramadan. Number 2 is increasing in our recitation of the Quran. Increasing in our recitation of the Quran. So, We have a narration from one of the Tabi'in. There's actually multiple narrations from the Tabi'in. One of the Tabi'in narrated that when the month of Shaban would approach, his people would free up their time to recite Quran. Right? So this is the Tabi'in are the second generation of Muslims. So in the generation of the Sahaba and the Tabi'in, the second generation of Islam, when Shaban would come in, people would now start freeing up their time to recite Quran. Now in our minds, we think only of Ramadan as the month in which we recite Quran. Right? We think only of Ramadan as the month in which we recite Quran. But what we understand from this is that it is the practice of the Tabi'in to start increasing in the recitation of Quran in Shaban, in preparation for Ramadan. Right? It's specifically done in preparation for Ramadan. In another narration, he says that the month of Shaban is the month of the reciters. The month of Shaban is the month of the reciters. Meaning, that is when you will see people reciting the most Quran. Again, we're talking about the second generation of Islam. In the second generation of Islam, you would see people reciting Quran in the month of Shaban as part of the preparation for Ramadan. And we know that there's a practical value to this, right? The practical value to this, specifically for our Hufaz, is that increasing your recitation of Quran in the month of Shaban prepares you to help improve your memory so that when you are leading the Taraweeh, it is fresh in your mind, right? So, of course, with the second generation of Islam, many of them were Hufaz. So, it was normal that they would spend the month of Shaban reciting the Quran. In a third narration from one of the Tabi'in, related to Shaban and the Quran, it is narrated that one of the Tabi'in, whenever Shaban used to begin, he would close his shop for the entire month and spend the month reciting the Quran. Right, so this was one of the awliya, one of the righteous amongst the Tabi'in. By the way, when you hear these stories of the awliya, it doesn't mean it's something everybody has to do. This is someone who's reached a higher level of piety. Right? These are aspirational goals. Sometimes you mix this up, right? Sometimes you hear stories of someone who prays all night, or who recites the whole of Surah Baqarah in one rakat, or who recites Quran for an entire month, and oh, I can't do that. Well, yes, that's the reason we narrate these stories, because these people reached a higher level. It doesn't mean it's an obligation upon us to do exactly what they did. It simply means that that is a higher level of piety to aspire towards. So this member of the second generation of Islam, this one, Tabi'i, he, in the month of Shaban, used to take it one step further, right? Others would free up some time to recite Quran. He would just close his shop, right? No work for Shaban and Ramadan, just reciting Quran and worshipping Allah. That's another level. That's a very high level of piety. But what all of these narrations have in common is that Shaban, for the Tabi'in, was a month of reciting Quran. It was a month of reciting Quran. And again, I believe this practice has been lost in our times. Right? Unfortunately, many of us don't open the Quran outside of Ramadan, which is a separate problem that requires a separate khutbah. That we really should have some interaction with the Quran every single day. We should have some interaction with the Quran every single day. Even if it's opening for just 10 or 15 minutes to recite and to reflect and to contemplate the meanings of the Quran. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day will benefit us. But in the month of Shaban, it should be more. So if you are in the habit of reading for 10 or 15 minutes a day, the month of Shaban, increase that. And in the month of Ramadan, increase it even more. Because this is the time of the Quran. And this is the time for connecting with the Quran. So I mentioned that there's 3 acts of worship that I would advise us to increase in the month of Shaban. The first, taken from the hadith, is fasting. That this is a good month to fast extra as a means of preparing yourself for fasting the month of Ramadan. And it was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to fast the entire month of Shaban. I want us to think about this, right? We fast for 29 days and we feel like we've done something big. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would fast the entire month of Shaban, then the entire month of Ramadan, and then the 6 days of Shawwal. Right? We're not even doing half of that. So it's a long way to go to reach that level of spirituality. But we can start fasting a few days of Shaban. Not the whole month, but start with a few days, just to start building this up. A third act of worship that we can do in the month of Shaban to prepare ourselves for Ramadan is to start praying more at night. To start praying more at night. Right? It's a separate topic, the issue of Taraweeh and Qiyamul Layl. But essentially, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to pray at night what we call the Taraweeh and what they call the Qiyamul Layl. He used to pray it all year round. All year round. Consistently. This was a daily practice of his. It was not a Ramadan practice of his. It was something he did all year round. Now, to make things easier for the people, we have it after Isha in the masjid, in Ramadan. This is to make things easier for the people. But the actual sunnah is to do it by yourself in the last 1/3 of the night, all year round. So how do we prepare ourselves for the night prayers? By doing a little bit of that in the month of Shaban. So if you plan to pray 20 rakats at night in the month of Ramadan, start with 2 or 4 in the month of Shaban. 2 or 4 extra rakats after Isha in the month of Shaban of Qiyamul Layl. By the way, across all madhabs, if you want to pray Qiyamul Layl any time of the year, you can pray any number of rakats at night. Right? Some of us think like there's a restriction, like you prayed your Isha, you prayed your Sunnah, you pray your Witr, and like, okay, I can't do any more. No, you can just keep praying 2, how many you want all night long. There's no restriction on Nafil Salah. There's no restriction on extra Salah you pray at night. So you can pray extra. It's a misunderstanding to think that you're restricted to only to that which is Fard and Mustahab and Wajib. Beyond that you can pray as much as you want at night. One more point that we can take from these ahadiths. This is a very subtle point that you wouldn't really pick up just from reading the hadith on their own. But one more point we can take from this hadith is that the acts of worship that we do in the month of Shaban should be private. Right? The acts of worship that we do in the month of Shaban should be private. You see, the acts of worship that we do in Ramadan are public. They are community acts of worship. We fast as a community. We have iftar as a family or a community. We pray Taraweeh as a community. In Shaban, you fast as individuals. Nobody knows you're fasting. You pray 2 rakats at night. Nobody knows you pray 2 rakats at night. You increased in your Quran. Nobody knows you increased in your Quran. And how do we know this from the hadith? It's a very subtle thing. Any hadith we have about the Prophet ﷺ increasing in his acts of worship in the month of Shaban, all of them were narrated only by his family. All of the narrations about him increasing in his fasting or any other acts of worship in the month of Shaban, they are narrated only by his family. Meaning only his family knew he was fasting. Because it was a private act of worship. Right? There's 3 narrators for these ahadiths. Aisha bint Abi Bakr, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So obviously if a man is fasting, his wife knows, because she's going to prepare iftar for him. The second narrator is Salama radhiyallahu anha, also a wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the third narrator, the one who asked him, why are you fasting in Shaban, is who? Usama ibn Zayd. His adopted son, his adopted grandson, right? So Usama ibn Zayd, even though he was not biologically related to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he grew up in his home. He was a part of his household. He treated him like part of his family. Right? If you read any narration about the relationship between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Zayd ibn Haritha and Usama ibn Zayd, he treated them like family. They were in his home, they were part of his family life. And so, all of these narrators are people who knew the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam personally and were part of his household. And so, they were the ones who knew that he was fasting. And they are the ones who narrated it. And so, some of the scholars say the benefit we take from that is that just as Ramadan is a month of public worship, our Shaban should be a month of private worship. So if you're fasting in the month of Shaban, nobody needs to know about it besides your family. Because that's also part of the Sunnah. So we ask Allah to allow us to reach the month of Ramadan and to benefit from the month of Shaban. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين ونستغفره ونؤمن بتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي أما بعد فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أيها الناس أفشوا السلام وأطعموا الطعام وصلوا الأرحام وصلوا بالليل والناس نيام ادخلوا الجنة بالسلام. As part of our spiritual preparation for Ramadan, some of the acts of worship that we can increase in, not just in Shaban but all year round. One of them is to repair family ties and to make peace between people. So the hadith I just narrated is not related to Shaban, but it's a general advice. And this the context of this narration is when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam first made hijrah to Medina, and the people gathered around him to hear what he's going to teach them. What was the first advice he gave to the people of Medina? Remember, the first advice he gives to the people of Medina is advice for the entire ummah till the end of time. It's very important advice. So it applies to us now as it applied to the people there. What was his advice to the people of Medina? He said, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, afshus salam, spread peace. Two meanings here. One, spread salam, greet each other with salam. The other, be people who cause peace on earth. Be a force of peace on earth. Right? What imut ta'am? Feed the poor. Be generous with your food. Take care of others. Wasilul arham. Maintain family ties. Wasallu bil-layl wa nasu niyam. And pray at night when everyone else is sleeping. I mentioned earlier the importance of qiyamul layl. Hadith mentions it again. Pray at night while everybody else is sleeping. What would you get out of this? So he mentions 4 good deeds. The salam, taking care of the poor, maintaining family ties, and praying tahajjud. What is the reward for these 4 things? تَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةَ بِالسَّلَامِ. You will enter paradise in a state of peace. It's a very powerful and beautiful hadith. And as we prepare spiritually for the month of Ramadan, and we go through the month of Shaban, and we are fasting, and we are trying to improve our spiritual state, so that we enter Ramadan in a good state, with a good relationship with Allah. As we do this, I want us also to repair our relationships with people. Because if our relationships with people are broken, this will have a negative impact in our hearts and in our relationship with Allah. That if we have ill feelings towards any person, this becomes a distraction from Allah. This becomes a means of stopping us from getting close to Allah. And there are 2 pieces of advice in this hadith related to this. Number 1, spread peace. Be a source of peace. If people are arguing and fighting, make peace between them. Number 2, maintain family ties. Maintain family ties. And I've mentioned this many, many times. It's a very important part of our religion to maintain family ties. So as we get close to the month of Ramadan, if we have people in our lives that we have cut off, whether it is friends, whether it is family, whether it is neighbors, whether it is just some Muslim brother or sister that you have cut off, now is the time to reach out to them, to seek their forgiveness, to patch things up, to rebuild that relationship, and also to let go in your heart of any grudges towards them. To let go in your heart of any grudges towards them. And to end this, I just want to share one story from the hadith that should inspire us to do this. That once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was sitting in the masjid with the Sahaba, and he said, the next person to enter the masjid is going to Jannah. So they all turned to look at the door, and they expected maybe Abu Bakr or Umar or one of the great Sahaba would enter. And a man entered who nobody knew. Just some, random musalli. We don't even know his name. His name not even mentioned in the hadith. Just a person that nobody knew. And Abdullah ibn Umar was puzzled. Like, this guy's going to Jannah? We don't know who this guy is. He's not famous. He's not known for his piety. We don't even know who he is. He's just one normal guy living in Medina. So Abdullah ibn Umar decides to investigate. He follows this man. He talks to him. He asks, can I spend the night at your house? And he observes him. And the more he observes, the more confused he gets. Because this man's not praying tahajjud, this man's not fasting, this man's not doing any extra charity. He's not doing anything outside the norm. Yes, he's doing the 5 pillars. Back then everybody did the 5 pillars, right? So that's not extra, that's the minimum expectation. But he's not doing anything extra. And he's trying to figure out, why is this guy going to Jannah? What could he possibly doing that we're not doing that he's going to Jannah? So eventually he asks him. And he says, this is what happened. The Prophet ﷺ said the next person to enter the masjid is going to Jannah. And you enter the masjid. What are you doing that we are not doing? The man, being a humble, simple man, he couldn't answer. He said, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing that you're not doing. And this left Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu even more perplexed. After a while, the man thought about it and he called him back and he said, I think I might have figured it out. I think I figured out what I'm doing that other people don't do. Because for him, it wasn't even a big deal. It was just part of who he was. Right? What did he do that made him a person of Jannah? He said, every night before going to bed, I make sure I have no ill feelings in my heart towards anyone. I let go of all grudges. Abdullah ibn Umar said, that's it. That's what you're doing that we can't do. That's that higher level of faith that you have. Letting go of grudges. Letting go of ill feelings towards people. It brings back to this hadith. Maintaining ties, being people of peace. تَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةَ بِالسَّلَامِ. You will enter paradise in peace. And here we have a role model of that. A man who spent his life trying to make sure he has no grudges towards anyone. He has a peaceful heart towards people. And that was his means of entrance into Jannah. So as we come closer to the month of Ramadan, and as we are increasing in our acts of worship in the month of Shaban, one of those acts of worship that I would strongly recommend that we increase in is maintaining family ties, forgiving each other, and rebuilding our relationships with other members of this ummah. We ask Allah to allow us to reach the month of Ramadan and to benefit from the month of Shaban. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our good deeds and to make us from the people of righteousness. We ask Allah to help the people of Palestine and anywhere else in the world where Muslims are oppressed. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.